Hey guys, it's Michael Kummer here. In today's video, I'm going to share with you the 10 tips that we have used to get our kids to eat healthy. And my hope is that by watching this video, you can get your kids to eat healthy as well. Now, before we get started, make sure you subscribe to this channel and you click on the little alert button so you get notified when I publish more videos like this. Now, the reason why I decided to record this video is because a grandmother reached out to me after having watched my Kids on Keto video, and she asked, what can I do to help or to get my grandchildren to eat healthier, to get them away from the standard American diet, more towards a healthy diet? And so that's the reason why I decided to record this video. But let's define healthy diet first, because chances are my definition of what is healthy might not be the same as yours. And I have a relatively simplistic view on human diet. I believe that we should be eating the same foods that our ancestors and early humans have eaten for millions of years. And based on the latest scientific evidence and everything we know about our ancestors, early humans were apex predators that hunted and killed animals and that had a predominantly animal-based diet, meaning they ate animals from nose to tail, including organ meats, including all the fat, including all the muscle meat, of course, and they also ate seasonal plants whenever they were available, and in particular when they couldn't find any better sources of food. So when they were unsuccessful during a hunt, they might have eaten some of the plants that grew at that time just as a survival food. But the majority of their calories came from animal-based sources. And so that's what I consider a human appropriate or a species appropriate diet for humans. Now, with that out of the way, let's get to the 10 tips. Don't expect your kids to do something that you're unable to do yourself. Kids learn not by what you tell them, but by what they see. Before we transitioned our kids to a more appropriate diet, we started a diet ourselves. We transitioned from a standard American diet to a Paleolithic diet or paleo diet to a ketogenic diet, and ultimately to an animal-based diet, which I consider somewhat of a mix of paleo, keto, and carnivore. And so it's very important that you experience what it means to change your diet, what it means socially for you, especially in the beginning, what it means to crave for those carbs that you had in the past from the processed junk food, etc., that you might have eaten in the past. You need to experience that, and you need to prove that you can change, adapt, and then feel better. So it's important that you lead the way and don't expect your kids to do something that you're not willing to do yourself. Tip number 2, explain to your kids in age-appropriate language why you're changing dietary habits and what the impact of your diet and of food is on your and on their body. We sit down with the kids at least once a week and we talk about the impact that food and lifestyle in general has on our health and well-being. We point out examples and say, hey, this person has to inject insulin every couple of hours because they have diabetes. Well, they have diabetes, especially if it's type 2, not type 1, because their blood sugar got out of control and has been out of control for a long time. So now they have to do something that reduces the quality of their lives. And those are the things, including all the other chronic diseases around us, that if you think about it, how many Americans suffer from a chronic disease? These are the things that we want to avoid. We want to grow old and still be fit and capable of doing all the things that we love doing. Spending time with family, traveling, working out, working in our garden, etc. All of those things can go away or be significantly impaired if we get sick. And so that's one of the reasons why we do what we are doing. You need to have those conversations, and you need to do a little bit of research. You need to be able to answer questions, and you need to be able to truly understand and believe yourself that what you're doing is the right way. And yes, there are consequences to that. There might be some inconveniences, if socially, etc. But it's the right thing to do. and understand that not everyone is doing the same thing, not everyone has the same knowledge, and not everyone is on the same stage of transitioning as you are. Maybe some people never transition or move towards a more healthy life, but those who do, it's a journey, and you might be on a different stage of someone else. So explain it to your kids, have those conversations, and make sure they understand that whatever they put into their mouth and into their body directly impacts how they feel, how they perform mentally, physically, etc. Tip number 3, and this might be the most impactful and most important piece of advice I can give you. Don't have at home what you don't want your kids to eat. With some exceptions, obviously, like alcohol or coffee, depending on their age, but everything else, in our example, everything that we have at home, in our fridge, in our pantry, is fair game. If our kids want to have something, they can go and grab it. There is no restrictions. In the past, we had foods at home that were relatively healthy, but we still did not want our kids to have them on a regular basis. So there was always an argument, no, you can't have this, but why not if it's at home, etc. That whole argument goes out of the window if you don't have foods at home that you don't want your kids to eat. Very simple. And the same goes if you're struggling with, oh, I want to have this snack, whatever. If it's not at home, you can't have it. Very simple. And so by making that change in our household, by only buying what they can have at any time, more or less, we've removed a lot of friction and a lot of arguments, and we've been much, much happier overall as a family. There are two things that taste good, that humans respond to well. One is sugar, obviously, we know that, and the other one is fat. And the reason why your low-fat yogurt tastes so good is because they put in a lot of sugar. So by removing fat from foods, you have to add something else, and that is sugar or carbohydrates. And so it's up to you to reverse that, to take away the sugar and the carbs and to replace them with healthy fats so that your kids will still like what they're eating. If it doesn't have sugar and it doesn't have fat, chances are it tastes like crap. You don't want that. So one very simple example, our kids have breakfast or have eggs for breakfast most of the days. And so what we do, we fry bacon and then we use the bacon fat. There's like a half an inch of sometimes of fat in the pan. We use that to fry their eggs or to make an omelette. And that tastes simply delicious because of all the fat. Fat has a lot of flavor. And that's why you want to buy, if you have a fatty meat, chances are it tastes better than a very lean cut because the fat, again, adds flavor. And so that's one of the easy ways of transitioning away from junk food by replacing it with healthy fats. And by healthy fats, I mean animal fats from pasture-raised animals. So those are saturated fats. They don't clog your arteries. They don't increase your risk of heart disease. That's BS. It's been proven to be false. You can use beef tallow, of course. You can buy those jars. You can buy bacon fat. Just make sure whenever possible to get it from pasture-raised and grass-fed animals. You can use ghee. That's clarified butter. You can use coconut oil, you can use avocado oil, you can use olive oil. There are a lot of, just stay away from seed and vegetable oils. That's really the number one. And if you do that, if you replace those carbs with healthy fats, then you can slowly transition your kids over to being more metabolically flexible, to not start getting hungry and getting cravings whenever they haven't eaten in an hour. I know traditional dietary advice is that you should have a meal every couple of hours or 3 big meals and then some snacks in between to prevent your blood sugar from crashing. That's the absolute worst advice I've ever heard. Here is the thing. If you're metabolically healthy and metabolically flexible, then when you don't eat, your body starts accessing its own body fat as a source of fuel. And if you're metabolically healthy, then your blood sugar will also not dip to levels where you feel woozy and low on sugar and you need to eat something. If you're metabolically healthy and flexible, that will not happen. And one of the easiest way to transition or to get your kids to be metabolically more flexible and healthier is to stop feeding them all the time. Give them a break. The body needs a break, needs a rest, not to digest food 24/7, or at least not during the whole day. The other thing is by removing carbs, like I've mentioned in the previous tip, one of the previous tips, by giving them eggs for breakfast with a lot of fat and no carbs or very few carbs, maybe a couple of berries on the side, but that really forces the body to learn how to use fat as a source of fuel instead of glucose from carbohydrates. And once they've managed and to use fat for fuel, they don't get hungry in between meals. That's really the principle of the ketogenic diet. That's why I recommend at the beginning to significantly reduce the amount of carbs you give to your kids, so they can learn to be metabolically flexible, they can learn how to use fat for fuel, and then it's significantly easier to go without food for extended periods. So they might have breakfast, they might have lunch, and they might have dinner. In some cases they might only have 2 meals a day. Once they're metabolically healthy, they let you know when they need food, but it's not driven by a craving for carbs. It's driven by the body's true desire to get some energy from high quality calories. And that leads us to tip number 6. It's okay if your kid doesn't want to eat. He or she is not going to die. There are cases in our home where, the kids say, we don't want to eat, we'd rather play. That could be either because they got enough calories and energy from a previous meal and they're just not hungry. Or in some cases, they are hungry, but their desire to play is bigger than their desire to satisfy their hunger. And that's fine too. I'm not proposing to put your kids on an intermittent fasting diet where they can only get 1 meal a day or anything crazy like that. Absolutely not. But they are not gonna get sick. They're not gonna starve because they skip the occasional meal. It's perfectly fine. And that's especially true once they've become metabolically flexible. If they can simply tap into existing body fat reserves, then they might be fine not eating, especially if they have a little bit of extra fat to burn. There's nothing wrong with burning that fat instead of getting it from the food you eat. Our kids do that at least, I want to say once a week or so. They skip a meal, and that's fine. It's not because we make them, it's because they don't want to eat. No problem at all. Tip number 7, prepare the meals of your kids from scratch whenever you can. I know cooking every meal from scratch might feel daunting, it takes extra time, I understand that. But the thing is, the more meals you cook from scratch, the more control over you have what goes into your kid's body. The other reason for that is most of the packaged food out there is junk. And it's incredibly difficult to, if you're not experienced, if you're not deep into nutrition, to look at the label or look at a piece of processed food and determine if that's truly healthy or not. Because brands do whatever they can to make you believe that this is the best food you can possibly get and give to your kids. There's a lot of misleading marketing language, and typically what I recommend is when you pick something up, immediately turn it around. Whatever it says in front of the label is BS. But even the nutrition label is sometimes hard to decipher if you don't understand what all the ingredients mean, how the serving sizes work, and there is a lot of information on nutrition labels that can be confusing, misleading in some cases. And so the less you have to worry about that, the less your chances are that you give your kids something that's unhealthy. So by cooking from scratch, you significantly reduce the risk. Now the good news is that an animal-based diet or cooking with an animal or based on an animal-based diet is significantly easier than many other types of diets. There is really, you have meats, you have eggs, you have a couple of fruits and a couple of veggies to choose from. So it's fairly simple to prepare food. Just fry some meat, fry some eggs, make some bacon, wash some berries, and then maybe slice an avocado. Maybe you make the most, almost the most elaborate meal that we make these days is guacamole. Other than that, it's, piece of meat, piece of fish, whatever the case might be, seasonal fruits, fresh fruits, a couple of veggies. That's really it. There is not much to it, and it doesn't take a long time, but it really helps you to also understand how food is made, where it comes from, and what it does to your body. Tip number 8, don't use unhealthy food and junk food as a reward. I know that's very easy to do that, if your kid has been good, here is a popsicle, or here is, something that you normally don't get. But the problem is you create a wrong association with junk food and reward. And kids think, okay, this is a good thing. I did something good, so I'm getting something good. But it's not. You're actually giving poison at the end of the day as a reward for good behavior. In fact, I'm not really sure if using food, regardless of healthy or unhealthy, is a good way of rewarding behavior. But if you want to use food as a reward, then I would do something. I would maybe pick a fruit that I typically don't get. For us, for the longest time, that was a banana, because bananas are relatively high in carbohydrates. So for a while, when we were on a more strict ketogenic diet, we didn't eat any bananas. And so from time to time, maybe once a month or so, the kids got a banana, and they were super happy about, wow, now they have a banana. I mean, it sounds crazy that our kids would be happy about getting a banana. But that could be something, or maybe an exotic fruit that you don't have every day. Maybe you find a mango at Whole Foods, or papaya, or whatever the case might be that typically don't get access to, but that's good and can be sweet. That would be an option. Or there is beef jerkies, that some kids really like, stuff like that. But don't use junk food as a reward. That's confusing and misleading for the kids, and I highly recommend you don't do that. The problem with making exceptions sometimes is that kids don't easily know the difference between a one-time thing and something that should happen more frequently. And just to give you one example, I went to Whole Foods a couple of days ago, and I brought my younger son, Lucas. And so on the way back, we stopped at a local bakery that makes keto and paleo muffins and other treats. And so I wanted to pick up a couple of paleo and keto muffins. And so we went in there, and the bakery also sells handcrafted gelato with relatively clean ingredients. I mean, there's, I'm sure, sugar in it, but otherwise it's relatively good ingredients. And I must have had a particularly good day, because I asked my son, hey, do you want to try, a scoop of the gelato? And of course he said yes. So he had the gelato, he really liked it. We went home. A couple of days later, he was in the car with me again, and he's like, so we're gonna go and grab some gelato? And I'm like, no, that was an exception, and he was fine with it. But sometimes in the past, in particular, we had occasions where we did something once, or we allowed something once, and then it turned into an argument because we didn't allow it again. So you have to judge if making an exception is worth it. If that turns into a drama and whining and a whole argument, then maybe the exception isn't worth it. Also, make sure if you make an exception, it really stays an exception. If you have pizza once a week, it's not an exception anymore. It's a rule, and you don't necessarily wanna muddy that water. Tip number 10. Try to find alternatives to some of their favorite foods. And by alternatives, I mean, of course, healthier alternatives. So if your kids like pancakes or waffles for breakfast, then find a keto-friendly or at least a paleo-friendly version of that. I know this is not typically, this particular example would not fall into the animal-based category, but if you find I'm gonna link it down below. There are a couple of brands that make keto waffles, keto pancake mixes, etc., that you can use to make the transition a little bit easier, to remove the added sugars, to remove some of the wheat flour and some of the other inflammatory ingredients that typical waffles and pancakes have, and move them over to more of a low-carb ketogenic version that also tastes good. And so that's one of the ways of transitioning without removing everything that I like in one shot, because that typically creates friction. So you want to find a migration path, so to say, that is as frictionless as possible by removing some of the most offending foods and replacing them with healthier alternatives. There are good sweeteners out there that you can use, like stevia and monk fruit. They exist in liquid as well as in powder or crystallized form, so you can leverage that if you enjoy baking. There are a lot of recipes out there with almond flour, with coconut flour. Again, this is not strictly an animal-based type of diet anymore at that point, but it helps you transition to one. And there are also, in our case, for example, our kids still eat once or twice a week those keto pancakes. And that's fine. You don't wanna be super strict either. The other example I can give you is if they like, if your kids like popsicles, what kid doesn't? What we do is we bought some stainless steel molds, and then we just throw some berries into a food processor, a little bit of water, pour that mix into the popsicle molds, stick them in the freezer for a while, and then they have a popsicle that only contains fruit and water. And the fruit is obviously sweet, so there is no need to add any sweetener, and it's the same as eating, the fresh fruit, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. Now at this point, you might have a couple of questions like, what do your kids eat, or ours, what do our kids eat? What do they not eat? What do we give them for snacks? How do we handle social events like birthdays, etc.? And some other frequently asked questions. And instead of making this video any longer than it already is, I'm going to refer you to my blog post where I have all of these questions and topics addressed in detail. So check that out. I'm going to link it down below. With that, I hope you liked this video. I hope it helped you to get some idea, some framework that you can use to get your kids to eat healthier. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, let me know in the comments. And of course, if there are any questions whatsoever about any of the things that I mentioned in this video, let me know in the comments as well, and I'll reply. With that said, thanks so much for watching. Until next time.